The following is a local resident producer's program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everybody, welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. Cheryl Hentz here, and Dan is not with us again this week, but I will be treading the waters for him this week and pushing this on forward. I use the water references because we're going to be talking this evening about water and a sport that our guests are very much involved in to help youth. And you might recognize the gentleman to my left. It's Steve Eliasen from the Oshkosh Area School Board of Education, but he's not here to talk about issues tonight. The last time he was on, he was actually running for the school board, and you successfully got on. And but you're here to talk along with your wife Sarah and your daughter Isabella about something that's very near and dear to your heart. It's the International Youth Sailing of Oshkosh. And I remember when you were running for office, you talked a little bit about your passion for sailing back then already. Has this been like a lifelong hobby for the two of you, or tell us how you got interested in sailing?
Well, sure, Cheryl, thanks. I was fortunate enough to grow up around water and from an aquatic family or maritime family. My father was an engineer for Mercury Marine. Boats were a central part of our lives. And I was introduced to sailing, through my father when I was perhaps 10 years old, and it took. I had a paper route. I was actually a carrier for the Oshkosh Daily Northwestern in my youth, and I saved my money for a few years and bought out my first sailboat. And I was on heaven. I would go. We lived in Winnicott at the time, and I would sail on the lake, all out on my own, no matter what the conditions. And I just loved it. I couldn't get enough sailing, and it has really been since that first introduction that I've been a lifetime sailor. Just love it, and I'm now at the point I still love sailing, of course, but the bigger thrill really is sharing it. I guess we reach that point in life where you think the better things or the truer thing is to share it with whomever you can, because I of course think it's fantastic for everybody.
Sure, sure. So for you it's been a lifelong thing. What about for you, Sarah? You got into it when you met him?
Absolutely.
How did I know that?
Yeah, I grew up water skiing.
Okay.
You know, in the northern lakes of Wisconsin, up in Vilas County. So we were always around water too, but not sailing. And when we were first married, I tried sailing every which way and just ended up hating it. Until we kind of came across this youth sailboat, the Open Vic. And I kind of taught myself to sail on that in an effort to help my kids learn to sail, and then with the youth sailing program, help other kids learn to sail. And now I really get it. I love sailing, and we're involved in much more sailing than we were 4 years ago, and each day I love it more.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot involved in sailing.
Yes.
I mean, just to take the boat out for even an hour, there's a lot of stuff involved in this, and I know this because one of our crew members who's not here tonight, but she and her husband are very avid sailors, and I think the last I talked to them about it, I think between them they had 3 different sailboats. Mm-hmm. And they took us out on it one day, and I mean, my God, just the prep work that goes into this to go out. And then you're out and you're enjoying yourself and having a great time, and then everything you have to do when you come back, to the port or the dock or whatever. It's just, I thought, I could never do all this. I just couldn't. I mean, just put me in a boat with a motor and I'm good to go.
I totally sympathize with that.
Yeah.
I when I first started trying to sail with Steve, it seemed like it took so long to rig, you know, some of the sailboats that we sailed on, that by the time they were rigged, the weather had changed and a storm had come up or something, and I didn't really get how that could be any fun, just rigging and de-rigging and hauling and trailering and all of that. But with the Bic, you know, it's designed a little differently, and it cuts down on all that time and all that. You don't have to know how to tie a whole bunch of different kinds of knots and all that kind of stuff. So it's as easy as sort of putting in a kayak.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more instant gratification.
Yeah.
That way.
Well, and the other thing that I learned the afternoon that they took us out was, you know, you can tell I'm not a sailor, you know. I mean, my folks had a boat when we were kids growing up, but it was a motorboat, you know. It wasn't a sailboat. I was always under the impression that a sailboat was just that. You had sails, and you used the wind as your source of movement, and that was it. But there actually is a small motor on this thing. So go ahead. You're nodding your head, so talk to us about that.
Yeah, there are purists, certainly, who would think that wind should be the only thing, right? And it is a mark of good sailing skills that if one can leave the dock or the mooring and return to either under sail power alone, it's sort of it's a beautiful thing, right? Sure. But certainly motors have a place. Although obviously with our youth sailing, that's very much a different scale, where we're sort of waist deep in the water, small little 9-foot boats, lots of kids, and you know, you'll have a safety boat or two out. But that's, you know, the youth sailing we do is non-motorized, but yeah, motors are a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well, especially if the wind dies. It's not like a kayak or a canoe that you can kind of paddle your way back to shore. Well, let's talk about this. You know, this International Youth Sailing of Oshkosh. You know, this is a program, and I didn't really know anything about this until Dan, who, as I mentioned, isn't here tonight, brought it to my attention. This is actually something that you guys have been doing with youth in our community for about 4 years now already. How did you tell us about the organization and what it is that you're really doing?
Yeah, really it started completely unplanned and completely organically. You know, of course, we'd been a sailing family. We'd introduced the kids to sailing early on. But odd as it sounds, we ran across a great new design of a youth boat from France when we were Strictly Sail in Chicago. Every year there's a big annual boat show at Navy Pier. And it just seemed like the coolest thing in the world, and a simple, smart design. And we got to talking, and talking led to having a boat, and led to another family in Oshkosh having a boat. And that led to friends sailing, classmates sailing, kids at the beach sailing, everybody sailing. And the education component, or the school connection, really stems from a belief and experience, and I think many sailors would share this, that if one considers what you learn along the way in sailing, it's a pretty thorough and good education, right? It's a great education, applied sciences and meteorology and marine environment, forces and loads and designs, international culture, as you think of the impact of sailing on the world, certainly in the settlement of the world. And then just the fact that it's just a lot of fun, right? So if you can have this great educational thing and it's a heck of a lot of fun, we put those two together and it's a really great experience. So it really started in the Alps Charter School, where our two young ones, were students. And we had just fantastic staff who, when we talked about let's use sailing as a vehicle for exploration of ideas and creativity, materials and design, and the staff said, great, let's go. And I don't know if there's a magic opening or a magic moment, but we had full buy-in. We just went ahead with it, went off perfectly the first year. This is 4 years ago now. Second year, repeat performance, it's gone off very well. And this past year, we thought, well, let's scale it up. Sarah was feeling a little too well rested, a little too well fed, so she said, I want to work harder and carry more boats. So we did.
Haul more boats.
So this spring, we thought, well, let's take it to a number of schools. So we kicked off Oshkosh School Sail Week, and as best we can determine, it's the largest school day sailing program in North America. And we exposed 280 kids to sailing in a single week, and it was, I can't tell you, Cheryl, it was a fantastic experience. We had so many volunteers and so many community supporters, and the Oshkosh Yacht Club supported us with a safety boat, and just all sorts of people came together. Yeah, and corporate sponsors like 4Imprint and Lowe's, and we had principals in the water with wetsuits, and we had teachers in the water, and we had kids who thought, oh, I could never sailing, and of course somehow we've had perfect weather, every time we've done this. And
You know you jinxed it.
how that happens, we were back at it this fall for a couple of days with Oaklawn again in September, and it was 80s, mild wind, warm water,
Yeah.
perfect wind direction. The heavens have aligned for us, so we're very thankful.
Well, we're taping this on the 20th of October,
Yeah.
and you'd certainly would have had a lot of strong winds the last couple of days, although it would have been awfully cold out there. For
Yes,
sure.
yes.
You said 280 kids on this particular day. How many boats would that have been?
Actually, over the course of a week.
Oh,
So
okay, all
roughly,
right.
60, however that works
Okay.
out per day. We about 20 boats,
Yeah.
about 20 of the open Bic youth boats. There's quite a concentration around Lake Winnebago now of these boats, 4 years on, and quite a number beyond, statewide, Madison, Sturgeon Bay, and Lake Geneva. So we'll go and scoop up boats from around the state and bring them here for a week. And what's so cool is that almost every owner said, well, if you're doing this big school sailing thing, just use our boat. Of course you can use them, no matter where they are or whatever. So we've just had a very supportive community.
Sure, sure. Now, what is this that we have here on our table? Tell us about this.
This is the boat that we ran across that really started the movement, as I say, oddly enough, that you wouldn't think a particular design, or it'd be like saying, well, this ski is what changed my life, but yet it is sort of what happened. Just a very modern design that, when we have them at the beach, for example, kids who have never sailed, who just stumble across it, will say, hey, mister, can I sit on it, touch it, sail it? Can your daughter, Isabel, teach me how to sail? They look so cool. I liken it to a snowboard, right? When kids see a snowboard, they go, that's cool, right? They might say an old ski from the 1960s, not so cool, right? So, and that it's durable, made out of plastic. The rig is incredibly simple, which Sarah's a great fan of. Just plop the rig in like a windsurfer and go, and you're literally sailing in about 90 seconds.
You just put the mast in a sleeve. That's why you don't have to tie knots.
No sail to haul up from the
Yeah.
halyard, no.
Because I was going to say, I don't
Yeah.
see any ropes on this at all.
The main sheet right here is pretty much the only one.
Okay, I
Yeah.
see it down there.
Controls.
Sort of couldn't be simpler, couldn't be more durable, and just cool as can be, and very international. The boat is designed in France. There are fleets around the world, and the U.S. we've just been underway for about 5 years.
So for anyone who's interested in sailing, whether they're a youth or someone else, there are different kinds of sailboats. I've never seen anything quite this simplistic, and that wouldn't scare me. The sailboat that I was on with our crew member and her husband, you could actually sleep on board this thing.
Oh, yeah.
And there are just so many ropes and knots and sails, and they're all at different levels and different heights. And I was overwhelmed by it.
I think that when you're not that was my experience too. How does anyone ever figure all this out? And I always felt like I was going to trip or get caught in a line or And the cool thing is, coming from kind of a non-sailing background, with this youth sailboat is the basics that the students learn on this boat, they can graduate with, to increasingly more complicated boats, if that's the right way to say them. And we do have other boats, catamarans and, a 23-foot hunter, things like that, where if the students were interested in kind of stepping it up, especially some of the older kids, the 8th graders and things like that, that's available for them to kind of take it to the next level. But what they learn sailing this boat is kind of what's true for sailing any boat. And so it's empowering to know that. It's like it really comes right down to this. No matter what you're sailing, it comes down to this line controlling this wind and this thing controlling the direction.
And so what other lessons, what other kinds of things do youth learn from sailing? What are some of the lessons that they can learn, besides those basic things that you just mentioned, Sarah?
For me, one of them, I love teaching. We've had the Oshkosh Schools Sailing Week, and we've also taught the Boys and Girls Club kids for 3 years now, along with kids from the Christine Ann Center. And then this past summer we had one day, we could have had a few more, but one day with the rec department. And what is so exciting about it is just to see when they master it, and it doesn't take too long to master it, it's as though they've grown several inches. And just the look of confidence on their faces, especially those who were a little afraid to begin with. I think that's the biggest thing, is just the confidence. Like, I mastered something.
Sure.
That's the
Well, and
biggest
at that
thing.
age,
Yeah.
confidence, you know, as we were talking a little bit before we started taping, that's a huge thing, you know, when you're that
Yeah.
age. Confidence is always a huge thing, no matter what
Yeah.
age you are, but at that age especially.
Yes, and we've had so many great examples. We had early on a young man who was a friend of our son's who said, I can't go beyond waist deep water. Waist deep, that's it for me. He sailed a bit more, he sailed deeper. That wound up leading to swimming. That wound up leading to the swim team. That wound up being his being very good at the swim team. So now here's this very serious competitive swimmer introduced it by sailing. And I always say, hey, sailing's great. I hope all these kids are lifetime sailors. But if you become a great pianist, a great swimmer, a great whatever, through this, mission accomplished.
Learn
Sorry to
more,
channel there, but
Sure.
yeah.
Sure. Well, let's bring Isabella into this. Now, you're 12?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, how long have you been sailing? I mean, this is kind of a cool thing, I think. You're enjoying it, I take it.
Yeah, I've been sailing for about 6 years.
Okay.
And 4 years with the open bic.
Now, what is
So-
an open bic?
That's this
This
boat.
boat.
What
Okay,
it's,
and why is it called an open bic?
it's manufactured by the Bic plastic company that is, pens,
Pens?
lighters.
Okay.
Um, I guess they started out manufacturing windsurfer, the boards for those.
Okay.
And then that led to this boat, which is kind of a hybrid design between
Okay.
a sailboat and a windsurfer.
Some people call it sit-down windsurfing.
Okay. Well, I can see where that would happen.
Yeah.
And so, have you only sailed in open bic, or have you sailed something other than that too?
I've sailed these
Opties.
boats, and then I've sailed Opties, and then we also have a hunter
Okay.
boat that we sail as a
That's
family.
a cabin.
Yeah, a
Okay.
cabin boat.
All right.
But they
So-
started out at the Oshkosh-Youth Club. Learned how on the Opties, like
Yep.
so
Okay.
many of the kids from Oshkosh do.
And an opti, for those of us who aren't sailors, we're more land
it's
lovers.
the classic adorable sailboat.
Okay.
The little sails and
Used
Okay.
universally,
Yeah.
very
All right.
widely
the
used.
the biggest difference is that this boat, the open deck, is self-bailing. I mean,
So in the event of capsized
Yeah.
water, it just runs right out.
Sure,
so-
yeah, I can
Yeah.
see that.
And so
on
you
the
don't
back
have
end
to-
there.
hoist it out with a bucket.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest differences between the two.
Sure, sure.
And
Well, you know, you've been sailing for 6 years, so you started when you were 6. What
Yeah.
What have you learned over the years about sailing?
First of all, I've learned how to control my own boat pretty well.
And you actually go out by yourself then on a boat? Okay.
And sometimes I've got to the point where when I help out at like the Oshkosh Sail Week, I can take people, like if they don't feel comfortable controlling a boat, I can just take them out into the lake and then bring them back so they can see what it feels like.
You'd be helping me. You'd be helping me. I'd be one of those people who, I'm not afraid of the water, but I don't know that I'd feel comfortable doing that. So you'd be helping me. What else?
I've learned different things about a lot of different boats and how you rig each boat
Sure.
and what you need to put in to different boats.
Okay. Well, I would assume, since you've been doing this for half your life already, 6 years, that you've probably sailed in all kinds of places, and
Yeah.
not just Lake Winnebago.
Yeah.
Where have you sailed besides Lake Winnebago, and what's been your favorite place?
Well, I've sailed in Miami, Cape Cod, Ottawa, Racine,
Okay.
the by Sheboygan. I think that's it. But
Door County.
yeah, and Door County. I couldn't really pick my favorite place because I really liked Miami because it was nice and warm.
Sure.
Except the wind was a little over 20 knots, and it was a little too much for me. And then each place had their ups and downs, but overall I'd have to say my favorite was probably Ottawa.
Okay.
That was my favorite.
Okay. Because?
I don't know, it was just it was like so much more different from the sailing atmospheres that I had already been in, and like the water was different, the people, like, I don't know, it sort of had a different style as everything else that I was used to.
Sure.
And I really liked that.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
See, I would have probably liked either Miami or Cape Cod, but that's just because I've not been to Ottawa, so.
In Cape Cod, Izzy had her first encounter with a jellyfish.
Oh, they're interesting.
So that, yeah.
Yeah, I had my
was the
first
downside
encounter
of
with one when I lived in Texas, and
Oh,
I was down
yeah.
in Galveston.
Oh,
Sure
yeah.
enough.
Yeah. And of course, when I spent some time in Cape Cod a number of years ago, you know, all I could think about was, you know, that's where they filmed Jaws.
Jaws. Yep. Yep.
But silly me, I actually fell asleep on a raft out out on the water. I looked like a lobster because I got so badly burned,
Yeah.
but apparently I wasn't too scared of sharks.
Yes, you were able to fall asleep.
Yeah, I did. It was so warm and just calm, but yeah, Cape Cod is great. So, you know, going back to this program then, what are the ages? I'm assuming that there's an age limit on this. You know, you have to be a certain age to participate.
You would think so, right? We're incredibly
Okay.
fluid about that, because what's curious is certainly there's kind of a sweet spot, or just by natural, you know, we zeroed in kind of on fourth grade in the school program. Boys and Girls Club, you know, there's a range, but we've had kids as young as 4, and obviously that's a very close monitoring situation, or maybe on board with Isabella. And then, you know, on the other end, what's so curious is that we've had no end of, like, moms, for lack of a better term, like if a family will have their daughter or son out sailing, and the mom will go, well, I used to sail, or I'd like to try that, or
even grandmothers.
yeah, yes.
Really?
Or I'll go out alongside
Yeah.
you, Sarah. And so we
Yeah.
have, so you see this multi-generational thing going on out there, all in these open bics and all in close proximity, and it's just a real hoot for this
Yeah.
kind of family sailing that you wouldn't think, you couldn't sort of design it that way, but it just sort of happens organically. So that's sort of a broad answer to your question.
Sure, yeah.
But you know, I'd say on the early end, you know, 6, 7 is
Yeah.
pretty good, and then, you know, probably the greatest concentration is around 10, 11, 12.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that seems, you know, where most kids fall.
And is there a cost to the kids who are participating in this at all?
We've had a range, and for years, early years, it was just kind of spreading the gospel, right? Get kids sailing. The boat's great because you love
self-funded.
sailing, and
Okay.
yeah, so we kind of throw in the family coffers into the effort. We've started, like, thankfully, the Boys and Girls Club have helped us out a little bit to at least, you know, cover some of the expenses. Schools, we've initiated a fee. You know, it doesn't really cover, when you look at all the boats and all the transport and all the people we have.
Safety and
It certainly doesn't cover it, but it certainly helps to defray, for example, a fuel expense to get boats everywhere, right?
Sure,
so,
sure.
we try to keep it, and then, you know, once or twice a week we're at the beach with what we call open sailing. So essentially, we've got boats, we're there with safety and life jackets, come down and sail, no registration, no fee, no anything, anybody can sail.
Okay.
No appointment, you know. So we really want to hold true to that, because it does seem that really makes a difference, right? There are some families or kids, for whatever reason, don't have a life jacket or will never have a life jacket, or a fixed schedule is tough, or registration fees are tough, or whatever that is. Kind of a drop in, show up and sail seems to be really effective.
Okay. Pardon me. And so there's this one week that was this huge sailing week, but this is something that you do throughout the summer?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because again, then Sarah said that, no, she didn't. That 1 week is enough, I got to keep going. So we're kind of mad about this, but then, you know, and once you start, like, it's inconceivable you'd say the Boys and Girls Club, we do both Oshkosh and Appleton once a week for about 6 weeks, and hard to imagine that we could ever give that up. So we want to carry on, and then our open sailing is really helpful, and the rec department, we had a waiting list last summer. So so it's just hard to kind of pull back from that, because it's so good for all those kids.
Sure.
And the goal this year with Sail Week is to go from about 280 to about 500. We have a few more schools who said, well, we'd like in. So we're kind of putting the number at around 500 for this year, which would be about 2/3 of our, say, 4th grade level of 750 kids in the OASD. So I mean, the goal is that literally every student will be exposed to sailing at some point in their school career.
And if someone wants to participate in this, but they just don't have the funds to do it, they should not let that deter them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. There's always a way, and you know, clearly for most of it, it's been absolutely fee-free. It's sort of been on selected cases where we'll, you know, get a fee if it seems appropriate, or if we can sort of help to cover the cost, but for the most part.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate in that, in addition to all of the people who own boats kind of letting us use them, Kevin Gratton at Wind Power Windsurfing, he has been instrumental in bringing up, like, for Sail Week for the schools, and he'll bring, 10 boats or, a substantial number of boats, and kind of let us use them.
He's both the local dealer, and Kevin is also a former men's world windsurfing champion who's run a shop in Fond du Lac for about 30 years. So a huge presence in the sailing community and windsurfing, and pouring his life and his resources into building this program, Fond du Lac and Oshkosh and around the region.
Sure. So. Well, thanks for telling us where the boats come from, because I was going to say, I mean, not everybody has their own sailboat. Even as inexpensive as something like that might be in comparison to the much larger boats. So you don't have to have your own boat, and there are people out there who are donating the use of their boat for a day or a week or the summer program or what have you.
In fact, we have any number of people, but we have especially one retired teacher from Oaklawn who bought a boat for the program, put it into use, and she was there every week in the water, long days, school week there. So she gave her life to it as well, not just Sarah, not just Izzy, but we've had people like that who've just been incredible. Yeah,
and it's our goal eventually to raise funds so that we can buy more boats.
It would make a world of difference if we had, say, 20 boats here in Oshkosh owned by the district or the rec department, or somehow that were here permanently, and to kind of formalize it a bit more would be very helpful, of course.
And I would imagine from an organizational standpoint, so you know how to kind of plan, if people do want to participate for the entire duration of the summer, they should probably let you know and kind of sign up, right? I mean, you just can't have people coming and going willy-nilly. That would be
Actually,
chaos.
That's how it's been. It is kind of chaotic.
If it's a Wednesday in the summer and it's nice weather, we're going to see a lot of people down at the beach.
And then we don't get home until like midnight because people are sailing until the sun is down.
Okay.
But yeah, we are always trying to bring a better sense of organization to it all, and I think each year as we get better at it, and we attract more people who are interested in helping out. It just kind of goes with the expansion of it all.
So no one will be turned away if they haven't called and signed up in advance, but it's appreciated if they can.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And who should they contact then? I know that I think Steve, on one of these things, I saw your phone number on there. And Kevin, was it Kevin?
Yes.
His phone number was also on there, I think I saw.
Yes, Wind Power Windsurfing in Fond du Lac. Or Sarah has just initiated, I think, Facebook.
We're trying to get all that in motion, where we've got the Facebook page to kind of keep people up to date and kind of conversing about where and when and who. Hopefully a website that can just keep people posted, and people can get back to us and let us know if they want us to expect them on a particular evening.
And you mentioned the Facebook page. We've got it up on the screen right now. I didn't put the precise website address for your page because it was really long, and as it is, this is already very long, and I didn't want to make it any longer. But if you just go to facebook.com and then you do a search of International Youth Sailing Oshkosh, that'll bring up their page, and so that's why I put that up on the screen like I did. So so that would be a way to contact you. And do you want to give your phone numbers, or do you feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Sure. I mean, since it's on the poster, you might as well. Go ahead and give that.
Oh, sure. It's area 920-216-7353 for me, and Sarah is 216-9393. Additionally, of course, I can be reached through the district website. If if all else fails, you can reach me there.
Sure.
And additionally, I don't mean to spring ahead of things, Cheryl, but I've also just recently joined Wisconsin's International Sailing Center in Sheboygan, where we'll be sort of replicating this school sailing program as best we can, or as quickly as we can in Sheboygan County, and the region. I can be reached at Sail Sheboygan too, sailsheboygan.org.
Sailsheboygan.org.
Yes.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of places to reach you. Sail Sheboygan, that's a mouthful. Sailsheboygan.org, or through the school district's website. The phone numbers, again, I have them here. Steve is at, these are both 920 area codes. Steve is at 216-7353, and Sarah is at 216-9393. or you can go to facebook.com and enter the international, I don't see it up there right now, the official name is the International Youth Sailing Oshkosh.
Yeah.
All right.
And it's called international because that was one of our other focuses, just global citizens. You know.
Sailing is such a universal sport, and it's one where arguably Australia, New Zealand, France, some other countries, Brazil, really dominate the sport. And I think it's important to see other places that are really significant, right? And we try to bring in international speakers as part of our school program too, that always have a connection to sailing. But it's a big, broad, beautiful world out there, and sailing is the way.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious, in our last minute and a half or so here, what have you? I assume that you've had some folks involved in this besides your daughter. You've had some folks involved in this from the beginning. What kinds of things have you heard from the kids as they've sort of progressed through this and had their horizons and their minds broadened?
I just had a little girl come up in the grocery store the other day, an Oaklawn student, and give me a big hug. Just kind of, we saw each other in the milk aisle, and just nothing but gratitude and enthusiasm. And I don't think there's been one child in all 4 years who hasn't come off the boat and out of the water with a beaming smile. And we get thank you letters, most of them just, I don't know.
A couple of memorable quotes. I've had on more than one occasion somebody come up at the end of the day and say, "Mr. Eliasen, this was the best day of my life." You just want to crumble in that moment, right? Say, great, let's have more, right?
Sure.
And we had one young man who had been Boys and Girls Club a number of years, and years later came back and talked to the next batch of kids we had there, and he was so kind. He said, "Guys, listen to Mr. and Mrs. Eliasen, is going to change your life." And it's like, wow, this has a real impact. And I suppose it's what anybody in teaching hopes for, like, wow, it really matters, and it feels like it does. Wow, I feel lucky.
Do you do anything, just out of curiosity, in the off season? I mean, we're in fall already, we're approaching winter. It certainly feels like we're already in winter a little bit. But do you do anything organizationally or anything during this time?
We did. In 2010, we brought a bunch of Alps charter school kids down to Miami for a regatta and some snorkeling on the Keys, because the world, right, and the broader world and ocean life and ecology really matters. I'd like to really see somehow if we can find a way to get kids, into oceanic environments. I'm certainly doing my Sail Sheboygan organizational work there in the winter, and we actually begin our speaker series again generally in about March with sailing engineers and sailing musicians and sailing boat builders. And
so it never ends, does it? There's always perfect sailing weather somewhere. All right. On that note, we're going to end it. I see we're out of time. So thank you very much for being here, and keep up the good work. And thank you too also. We appreciate it.
We should give a shout out to our son Owen too, because he's our top safety dude.
All right.
So don't embarrass him.
Way to go. All right. Just sit tight. We're going to take a real short break, and when we come back, Tony Palmeri will be here. We'll be right back.
Every year, the U.S. Department of the Treasury receives about 1.4 million reports of problems with paper checks. Checks can be lost, stolen, or delayed. If you still receive Social Security payments by paper check, Treasury wants you to know about a safer, more convenient way to get your money: the Direct Express Prepaid Debit MasterCard. The Direct Express card is new and is available to anyone receiving Social Security benefits, even if you don't have a bank account. Your monthly benefits will be automatically placed onto your card account each month on the day your money is due. While other debit cards cost money, it is possible to use the Direct Express card for free. to make purchases, pay bills, and get cash at thousands of locations nationwide. There are no sign-up or monthly account fees. No more waiting for the mail or worrying about lost or stolen checks. Call 1-877-212-9991 or visit www.usdirectexpress.com.
And welcome back to the second half of Eye on Oshkosh. And as promised, Tony Palmeri is here. He's been here a lot over the years. Tony was my co-host for a couple of years, and then when he got on the council for the city of Oshkosh, he became very, very busy, but you could see him every other Tuesday night sitting on the council dais. He's not on the council anymore, but he's back again because he's involved in another really important project that he's here to talk to us about tonight. It's called the Middle Village Neighborhood Association Project.
Correct.
All right. Well, thanks for being here. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Always love being here.
This actually, I didn't know anything about this, I have to admit, and Justin Mitchell told me about it, and suggested that I give you a call and have you come on. So, and I'm a little embarrassed that I didn't know anything about it because you actually helped form this last year already in 2010. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What exactly is it?
Well, first of all, the Middle Village neighborhood in Oshkosh, the borders are Franklin, Irving, Division, and Church. And it started off as a neighborhood watch. A couple of people that live on Frederick, especially Amy Klemp and Pam Baumgartner, two great citizens in Oshkosh, they were very active in starting a neighborhood watch. And neighborhood watches are very important for safety and so on. But many of us in the neighborhood came to the conclusion that the watch by itself, while it's great for safety concerns, it doesn't do enough to do other things that are necessary in a neighborhood. For example, people should know each other. In our neighborhood, like many neighborhoods in Oshkosh, we've seen decline in property values. We've seen increases in crime. We've seen kids that don't have enough to do. And the only way you get at those things is by creating a neighborhood association. And so now that NeighborWorks is in Oshkosh, they are actually looking to our Middle Village Association as kind of like a test case for what citizens in a neighborhood can do. Over the last year, we have monthly meetings. And usually the second Sunday of every month, we meet at outside the Christ Lutheran Church, which is right off West Parkway Avenue. And at those meetings, the first thing we do is literally walk the neighborhood with members of the Oshkosh Police Department. And
when you say neighborhood, Tony, you're talking about this parameter that you had just mentioned before, and I'll just go over it again. It's the east border of Division Street, it's the south border of Church Street, the northern border of Irving Street, and the east side or the west border of Jackson Street.
Right, and we just created that arbitrarily. You know, for anybody watching tonight who's interested in creating a neighborhood association, you can create it wherever you want. You just have to have interested neighbors. You know, the best practice says that in any neighborhood association territory, you probably don't want any more than 100 to 300 homes. I mean, if it gets larger than 300 homes, it's probably going to be a little bit too large for people to congregate comfortably and so on.
Sure.
But what really got us going strongly, and I actually got this idea from people in NeighborWorks in Green Bay. Remember a few years ago when the city council had approved NeighborWorks and then they decided not to come, but then they later did? In that original proposal, I had called them up there in Green Bay, spoke to people involved, and they said the most valuable thing they did was walk their neighborhoods. It shows the bad guys in the neighborhood that they are outnumbered by the good guys and that the good guys are unified. So every month we have these walks with the police. It allows them to see what areas may be problem areas. It gets people unified and walking. And then after that walk, which usually takes about anywhere from a half hour to an hour, we then sit down and have a business meeting, if you will. And usually we turn it into a potluck, and people bring a dish to pass or whatnot. And depending on what month it is, what the weather is like, you'll get anywhere from a half a dozen people to 2 dozen people, and that's really enough to organize some activities. We've had a rummage sale. We're going to have a dumpster day soon that NeighborWorks is actually footing the bill for. We'll have 2 dumpsters set up in the neighborhood. People can throw out trash and things like that. We participated in National Night Out, in which we had the police, the fire department come down. There were activities for kids. We had a band. It was really an outstanding activity. So again, the main thing is it's based on the idea that if you want to improve a neighborhood, you have to know who your neighbors are. And you have to do activities that'll bring up the esteem of the neighborhood, if you will. Because if you think about it, neighborhood watches, and I know you've been involved in neighborhood watches, you put the sticker in the window.
And there's a sign that goes up.
And there's a sign.
Yep.
And that's great, but the problem is, there's so many vacant homes now, as you know, with foreclosures and things like that. When potential home buyers come into a neighborhood and they see the neighborhood watch, it doesn't always say to them, that's a neighborhood I want to live in. Often it says to them, that's a dangerous neighborhood. I don't want to be there. It doesn't mean get rid of Neighborhood Watch, but what it means is you have to have something in addition that is kind of like the smiling face of Neighborhood Watch. So one of our goals, and we're hoping this happens in the next few months, is to have signs placed at certain strategic corners that say, welcome to Middle Village. And NeighborWorks would like to see lots of neighborhood associations created so that we can have signs placed all over the city. Because as you know, Oshkosh up to this point, if you ask people where they live, they'll generally say north side, south side, east side, west side. And we think it's a good idea to break it down a little bit more than that, create certain neighborhoods and get people knowing each other. So that's how this came about.
Yeah, and certainly we don't want to put down Neighborhood Watch.
Not at all.
I mean, it's a great program. You're kind of doing some work with them now. I think you're on their board or something like that.
I'm on the executive board.
And see, I kind of look at it a little differently than you just said. If I see a Neighborhood Watch sign, because I've seen them in poorer areas, not necessarily in Oshkosh, but just, in traveling around. I've seen some in poorer type neighborhoods. I've also seen some in rather affluent neighborhoods. I look at it as, okay, these are people who are watching out for each other. And I look at that as kind of a good thing. But the problem with that, too, is, people move out of the neighborhood, the watch program may disband, and you don't know how quickly they take down the signs.
Well, that's often what happens. The signs go, you say disband. Often what happens is people think once we have the stickers up and the sign up, that's enough.
And it's not. You have to stay active with anything. You have to be involved.
You have to stay active. And again, the neighborhood association, I think, is the active part. It gives people things to do in addition to the public safety activities. But I would say to people watching, Cheryl, if you want to be involved in something like this, you got to be in it for the long haul. I mean, it's difficult. As you know, people are working multiple jobs. They're very busy. They've got families to take care of. And then on top of that, to say, can you have a couple of meetings per month? It's a lot to take on. But we've learned over the years that if you wait for government to fix problems in neighborhoods, it's not going to happen. The police can only do so much. So it has to be people, and not just homeowners, it has to be renters in the community also. We often forget the people who rent. I mean, I heard a figure recently, maybe you can validate it, that 40% of the people in Oshkosh are renters.
I don't know. I can't validate that, but it's not a figure that would surprise me, I don't think.
That's a number I've heard thrown out, and it suggests that we have to do a better job of working renters into a feeling of community. Lots of people think if they rent, they can't be involved in Neighborhood Watch or neighborhood.
They're still neighbors. They're still part of that neighborhood.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one thing in the Middle Village neighborhood, and this is another thing that got us going on this, we have absentee landlords who, unfortunately, have not been responsible with their properties. And we have found if it's just one property owner that calls one of these absentee landlords and says you need to do something, many of them won't respond or they'll blow you off. When all of a sudden it's a neighborhood association, and that neighborhood association is working with the city inspection department, working with the police, now all of a sudden you get the attention of these absentee landlords. We had one character, absentee landlord, who had a weed nightmare forever.
And he's a realtor in town, isn't he?
Yes.
We're not going to say his name,
Yeah.
but
And finally has addressed this. And I think, I think many of these absentee landlords, they thrive on the fact that their neighborhoods are not organized. And it allows them to make their properties just go completely haywire, overboard. It becomes safety issues, cleanliness issues, and what have you. So when people are organized, they can get things done. And let's face it, the city inspection department can only do so much. They don't have the largest staff in the world. I mean, and we put in calls to them, we email them, and they generally will get out and do their job, but it's going to take time. They're taking care of a whole city.
Yeah. Well, I know that the city of Oshkosh has, they've recently hired a part-time inspector in addition to what they have. But, you're right, they only have so many hours in a day. Their resources are strapped. The police, with all these cuts that we keep getting from Madison and so forth, that's taking more and more away from the resources that we used to rely upon to protect us and to watch out for us and to help us get problems resolved.
Absolutely.
And so you're absolutely right. You do have to kind of take the bull by the horns, and if you want something done, you can still rely on them a little bit because you may need their help.
Right.
But you have to be willing to be an active partner in it.
You sure do. Yeah, people have to take control of their neighborhoods.
Yeah.
It's really that simple. And, you have to go door to door. I mean, when we have activities in the Middle Village Neighborhood Association, we try to always make flyers and then deliver them door to door. Preferably, if you can, knock on the door and talk to people. That'll help get people out to activities. I think electronic communication is great, but I think over the last 5 to 10 years, I think many people think that's going to replace good old-fashioned organizing, and it really doesn't.
I hate it anyway.
Right.
It serves its purpose.
Right.
But you look at two college students, for example, or two teenagers, they'll be sitting on a couch next to each other, and instead of just talking and having a dialogue, they're texting each other back and forth. And I'm just sitting there thinking that is the most ridiculous thing. I mean, yes, these things all have a purpose.
Yes.
But nothing can replace good old-fashioned communication.
And we have a Facebook presence, and we want it to get larger. We want more. If you're on Facebook, look up Middle Village Neighborhood Association Oshkosh and hit like. We would love it.
We've been putting that up too.
Okay, we'd love it if you do that. Lori Hoover is actually creating a neighborhood toolkit that is going to be on the City of Oshkosh website, and that's going to be something to aid people who want to start neighborhood associations. And Robin Leslie in the city planning department has been absolutely outstanding. She is very much into this issue, has been very helpful in helping with association work. And so, hopefully if enough people in the city get involved in this, we can see a cleanup of our neighborhoods. That's the long-term goal.
Right, and so it really does go very much above and beyond what Neighborhood Watch does. And I mean, you grew up in New York.
Yep.
You probably didn't know a whole lot of your neighbors there, or maybe you did, I don't know. But I grew up here in town, and we certainly knew who our neighbors were, and I miss that. My brother kind of has that with his neighbors still, but he's still in the house we grew up in. I moved away for a while, and then you come back, and you're in a totally different neighborhood, and people just, because they're working so much, and I think we just have our guard up a little bit.
Yeah.
And we don't get to interact and know our neighbors
Another thing that happened, Cheryl, I'll bet you were raised in a neighborhood that had old homes like Middle Village, that has.
It wasn't really.
But with the porches in the front. I mean.
No.
Okay, you didn't have that.
No.
But in old neighborhoods, they used to build the homes with the porches in the front. People would be on their porches. You'd come home from work, you're waving to people on the porches.
Yeah.
And then we had this change in America where we started to build the homes with the big 2-car garages, no porches, and it literally became more difficult to be
Yeah.
visible to your neighborhoods.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I think in our neighborhood, which is older, we're trying to revive that ethic of walk your neighborhood, talk to people in the neighborhood. Don't just keep your head down and walk the other way. You know, people have to make efforts at doing this. Like I said earlier, the majority of people in any neighborhood, the overwhelming majority, are good, hardworking, tax-paying citizens. But over the years, those people have become isolated. They don't know the other good, hardworking, working, tax-paying citizens down the block from them. We're looking for ways to connect those people. Because the only way our neighborhood is going to change is if we get people to move into it who share good values, a neighborhood ethic. And you're only going to get those folks if you have a welcoming environment. And you know, one of our long-term goals, and hopefully we'll work on this with NeighborWorks, is to create I'll call it a marketing plan for our neighborhood. I mean, if someone is a young professional moving into Oshkosh and they're looking for a place to live, they'll often drive through a neighborhood like Middle Village and think, I don't want to live here. It doesn't look like, I used the word before, affluent. It doesn't look like an affluent neighborhood. But we are walking distance to Main Street. We've got pretty much everything you need is in walking distance except a grocery store.
Yes.
Right? But there's talk about creating a food co-op in Oshkosh that would be downtown. So I would think those amenities, walking distance to downtown, walking distance to Menominee Park, these are things that would be attractive to a family. But if we don't market it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's another thing a neighborhood association can do that the Neighborhood Watch, of course, is not charged with doing.
Right, right. And the purpose, Tony, behind like the the rummage sales and being at farmers market and that kind of thing, is that to? I mean, obviously you're selling things,
right?
So there's money, albeit I'm sure a small amount, but that's being used to help fund some of your efforts. But is it more about fellowship with your neighbors and helping to, bridge those gaps that customarily are there?
Yeah, it is. Like, for example, just preparing for the farmers market, we had, anywhere from 5 to a dozen people who literally were baking for the farmers market, and it became a real unifying kind of fun thing to do. I actually baked zucchini bread for the farmers market.
Did you really?
Yeah. If someone had ever told me I'd be baking zucchini bread for a farmers market, I would say, you're kidding. But it was because of our Middle Village Neighborhood Association. The rummage sale, which Christ Lutheran Church has been just outstanding, and everybody in every neighborhood has some structure like that will help out with efforts like this. But our rummage sale in that place, it was so unifying because people from the neighborhood came. We got a chance to meet people. So yeah, part of it is you're not going to raise a lot of money.
Right.
But the money we do raise is used to make copies of flyers, and we found a great band in Oshkosh called Paradox that played at the National Night Out for very inexpensively. A great band, by the way. And we used some money to play that. But again, it's you're right. The unifying nature of it is more important than the money.
And so we have been putting the Facebook thing up, and the link, like with our last guest, the link was just so long that I just put up facebook.com and then the official name here, Middle Village. I think I just put up Middle Village Oshkosh.
And if people want more information, they can look me up in the phone book, Tony Palmeri. My phone number is there. They can email me, tony@tonypalmeri.com. I'd be happy to help people if they're interested in forming a neighborhood association in their own neighborhood, and I actively encourage people to do that. Every neighborhood needs a handful of people. Doesn't have to be a large group, just a handful of people to establish that first meeting. If you can get that first meeting, then you'll find people will carry the ball and run with it.
Now, yours is called Middle Village Neighborhood Association. If someone wanted to start one in their own neighborhood, and again, everyone has their own definition of what a neighborhood is. And there's another project. We just had someone on a couple months ago, a professor from the university who's working with some folks, and having people just kind of tell them what their idea of a neighborhood is and draw what their neighborhood is. But if someone's looking at starting one of these in their own neighborhood, whatever their definition of neighborhood is, it wouldn't be called Middle Village, right? Because that's your name, because you're in the Central City District.
Right. Yeah, we thought we were kind of like in the middle between the campus area and the Near East neighborhood. And again, Lori Hoover really, I think, came up with the name. It just, when you look at the map, it makes sense to call it that. But other areas, for example, Stevens Park has a neighborhood association, the Stevens Park Neighborhood Association, because in that area, that park is so prominent. It made sense to call it Stevens Park. But maybe some neighborhoods might be interested in the history of that area. Maybe someone might want to like revive like a bloody 6th Ward neighborhood or something. I mean, seriously, I mean, whoever the people are organizing the neighborhood association can call it whatever they want. There's no real formula for it. And you know, generally, I think people will find certain natural boundaries that seem to make sense. And again, I think Robin Leslie at City Planning can really help people with this. You know, our planning department are the people who scour the maps, and they can help people with this. But we have found, Cheryl, that having a name does so much to build identity. We have been shocked in the Middle Village Neighborhood Association at how often the police department speaks about it, because it has helped them refine their team policing. Remember when Chief Goyle started the team policing concept?
Yeah, it's been a great thing.
Yeah, right. But the Middle Village Neighborhood Association has been one area of the city that has really put it to the test, because what team policing, its goal originally was to get the police to intimately know every area of the city. The only way they're going to do that is to walk the blocks.
Right. Right.
And we have given them the opportunity to do that, and they love it. I mean, they've been great. Sergeant Brian Schuldus and Sergeant Matt Craning have been the 2 officers we're most involved with, and they have just been absolutely outstanding. Their dedication to our issues. And here's the Neighborhood Watch connection. We are now in our neighborhood so comfortable calling them. You know, as you know, lots of people have this tension about calling the police. I think in Middle Village we've gotten over that. We've got a great relationship with the police, and the police love that. I mean, they want to see crime come down all over the area, all over the city, and they have found that neighborhood associations in concert with Neighborhood Watch really make their jobs a lot easier.
Okay. And you know, and this is ironically enough, about 2 months ago, I saw you and Lori.
Right.
And the police and a whole bunch of other folks walking down Irving Street. And I thought,
what are they doing?
What are they? Yeah, that's exactly what I said. I said, what in the hell are they doing? You know? And then as it turns out, I heard about this, and so now I knew what you were doing. And you do this once a month, you said?
Yeah, once a month, the second Sunday of every month at 1 o'clock. People can join us at the Christ Lutheran Church parking lot second Sunday at 1 o'clock if they want to join this walk, just to see what it's like.
Yeah, just to see what it is, and you know how you guys do things.
What was really great, the first few times we did it, what was really fun, people literally were coming out of their homes and they were saying things, and again, these are the good homeowners, right? And they were saying things like, they were first puzzled what this was, and then they were so thankful. And they would say to the police, you know, we thought you guys had abandoned this neighborhood. Because it seems like the only time we see you is if there's some tragedy and we see the lights go off.
Yeah.
But to see the police there when there's not a great tragedy is really something. And on some of these walks, this has been, people won't believe this has actually been fun. Usually once every 3 months or so, we'll take garbage bags with us.
Okay.
And we'll pick garbage out off the streets.
Okay.
Because you know what it's like in these neighborhoods where people come out of the bars at midnight and they're dropping bottles, they're dropping paper, then no one picks it up.
Yep.
And we've come to the conclusion, if you wait for someone to pick it up, it's not going to happen.
Right.
We pick it up. And so we did this the previous walk. We had 3 full bags of garbage from walking this neighborhood. Do I like picking up garbage? Well, yeah, when I know that it's going to be a cleaner neighborhood as a result.
Exactly.
So it's fun.
All right, excellent. Well, listen, Tony, thanks so much. We're out of time, but keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Check them out on Facebook. Go to facebook.com. It's Middle Village Oshkosh, and that'll take you right to their page. So thanks very much for joining us, and thanks to all of you, as always. We will see you next time. Until then, take care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.